The first time I went home with John, I encountered an extraordinary welcome.
Oh my God.
As soon as I stepped in, a large dog knocked me down, leaving me speechless from the pain.
Dad, Buddy, and I didn't mean to. We just wanted to welcome Aunt Grace.
Faced with this rough greeting, I straightforwardly told John the first wanted to break up and turned to leave.
John, this is too much. I can't stay here.
Unexpectedly, John, a 40-year-old man, started crying.
Emily, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining the child, but please understand.
Hearing John sobbing, I stopped in my tracks. John's ex-wife is my ex-husband's current wife. Friends and family who knew the situation thought I must have been emotionally disturbed to be with John. But only I knew that I genuinely liked John. Seeing John in tears, I decided to give him another chance.
All right, John. I'll give this another shot.
As soon as I stepped in, a large dog knocked me down, leaving me speechless from the pain.
Relieved, Dad, Buddy, and I didn't mean to. We just wanted to welcome Aunt Grace.
Faced with this rough greeting, I straightforwardly told John the first wanted to break up and turned to leave.
Emily, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining the child, but please understand.
Hearing John sobbing, I stopped in my tracks. John's ex-wife is my ex-husband's current wife. Friends and family who knew the situation thought I must have been emotionally disturbed to be with John. But only I knew that I genuinely liked John. Seeing John in tears, I decided to give him another chance. When John rushed out of the kitchen, he saw the scene.
Inda was trembling, tears streaming down her face, sitting in a mess of ribs and soup. I stood there, stunned, directly opposite Inda.
Linda! Are you hurt? Where does it hurt?
Dad, my face hurts. Aunt Grace said she wanted to teach me a lesson. Last time Buddy and I hurt her, so today she wanted to give me a lesson. Aunt Grace deliberately poured hot soup on me. It hurts so much. I think I might have blisters, boo-hoo.
Is what Linda said true, Emily?
No. It wasn't. Me.
John remained silent. Seeing her father not believing her, Linda started throwing a tantrum on the floor.
Ouch! It hurts so much! Dad, don't you believe me? No wonder people say that with a stepmother comes a stepfather. Dad, you don't love me anymore.
Something in Linda's words seemed to touch John's heart, and he no longer cared about me. He squatted down, repeatedly comforting Linda, telling her not to worry and that he would take her to the hospital immediately. But Linda refused.
If you don't send her away, I won't go to the hospital.
John looked at me helplessly, signaling with his eyes for me to leave. At that moment, I noticed Linda looking at me with a triumphant and defiant smile. Perhaps she was pleased that her scheme had succeeded. I sneered inwardly, glaring at the little actress in front of me, and directly called 911. When the ambulance arrived, Linda was somewhat guilty and refused to get in. I told John that Linda had poured the soup on herself and had tested the temperature beforehand, so it shouldn't have caused any burns. But since she said she felt uncomfortable, she should still go to the hospital for a checkup. Under the insistence of both John and me, Linda was taken to the hospital for an examination. After a thorough checkup, it was clear that she was fine. After all, she had tested the soup herself and wouldn't really hurt herself. Back home, John made Linda stand against the wall and sternly asked her,
Tell me, what really happened with the soup?
Linda was stubborn and refused to speak no matter what John said. Time ticked by, and the father and daughter remained at an impasse. I got up and pointed to the camera in the living room.
Is that always on? Can we watch the playback?
Yes, it can be done.
He then turned to check the connected computer. Linda panicked and blurted out.
No need to watch. I poured the soup myself.
John was furious and grabbed a ruler, hitting Linda on the bottom. Caught off guard, Linda screamed.
Oh!
She's getting older. Don't use physical punishment. Let's talk it out.
Get out. Don't pretend to be nice. I know you're just a homewrecker. You're the third party between my dad and mom. I hate you.
Hearing such words from a 12-year-old really shocked me. Linda's eyes were filled with hatred as she looked at me, and I was momentarily stunned. John was also taken aback. He stood there for a moment before reacting, then gritted his teeth and chased Linda into her room with the ruler. I sighed deeply and didn't stop John this time. A 12-year-old is not too young or too old. Speaking so recklessly and acting so impulsively, she indeed needed some proper education. I listened to the sound of John's ruler hitting Linda in the living room, thinking he must have used a lot of force. But Linda didn't make a sound, neither begging for mercy nor crying. Half an hour later, John came out looking defeated. I motioned for John to enter the study, and we gently closed the door.
If you want us to be together, you must tell the child the truth.
Linda is still so young, she shouldn't know too much about adult matters.
Linda is 12 years old, she needs to know the truth to distinguish right from wrong. Hiding the truth from her won't do her any good, it will only deepen her resentment and turn her into a troubled child.
But what if she can't accept the truth? Her mother has always been good in her eyes. What if knowing this causes her psychological issues?
She already has psychological issues, she resents me and tries to get rid of me, even at her own expense. If you let this continue, she will truly become a troubled child.
John looked defeated and apologized to me. Seeing John's dejected look, I didn't want to say more, but before leaving, I told him.
As an adult, Linda's little tricks can't hurt me, so you don't need to apologize to me. Indeed, Helen is not a good mother, she cheated, lied, and planted seeds of hatred in the child's heart. But you are not a good father either, you condone and support Helen's actions, even helping her hide the truth. By doing this, you are only harming Linda.
I just don't want Linda to be hurt more.
I ignored him and opened the door. I was stunned to see Linda standing right outside, looking dazed and motionless.
Dad, is what she said true?
I turned back to see John looking flustered, pleading with his eyes for me to stay silent. I sighed inwardly. John's indecisiveness made me more determined to leave.
Mom said she seduced you, she's the other woman, she drove Mom away. Mom said she would always love me. Mom said stepmothers are all evil. Dad, did Mom lie to me?
Linda, Mom does love you. But Aunt Grace is not the other woman. Dad met her later. The main reason Mom and I divorced is because
of what?
Because Mom fell in love with someone else.
She fell in love with that guy named Michael, right?
Yes.
You are all liars. You all lied to me. You are bad people, all of you. I hate you.
Linda's cries grew louder, and John couldn't console her. This had nothing to do with me. I wanted to leave, but her tear-streaked face held me back. The scene felt somewhat familiar. My own father had cheated back then, and I had cried like this while holding my mother. Resigned, I squatted down, waved John away, and took Linda into the study.
There's no need to cry, even if they divorce, your dad is still your dad, and your mom is still your mom. Your mom is an adult, she knows she's in the wrong, that's why she tried so hard to hide it, afraid you wouldn't forgive her. This matter has nothing to do with you, you don't need to cry or be sad. Just do what you need to do.
As I rambled on, Linda's crying gradually stopped. When I left that day, Linda's gaze seemed to hold a hint of curiosity. As soon as I stepped in, a large dog knocked me down, leaving me speechless from the pain. A soft, weak voice sounded in front of me. It was my future stepdaughter.
Dad, Buddy, and I didn't mean to. We just wanted to welcome Aunt Grace.
Faced with this rough greeting, I straightforwardly told John the first wanted to break up and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, John, a 40-year-old man, started crying.
Emily, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining the child, but please understand.
Hearing John's sobbing, I stopped in my tracks. John's ex-wife is my ex-husband's current wife. Friends and family who knew the situation thought I must have been emotionally disturbed to be with John. But only I knew that I genuinely liked John. Seeing John in tears, I decided to give him another chance. As soon as I stepped in, a large dog knocked me down, leaving me speechless from the pain.
Soft, weak voice sounded in front of me. It was my future stepdaughter.
Dad, Buddy, and I didn't mean to. We just wanted to welcome Aunt Grace.
Faced with this rough greeting, I straightforwardly told John the first wanted to break up and turned to leave.
Emily, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining the child, but please understand.
Hearing John sobbing, I stopped in my tracks. John's ex-wife is my ex-husband's current wife. Friends and family who knew the situation thought I must have been emotionally disturbed to be with John. But only I knew that I genuinely liked John. Seeing John in tears, I decided to give him another chance. Michael's shouting made Emily's eardrums hurt, so she moved the phone away from her ear.
What did I do? What are you talking about?
Stop pretending. Helen is still in the hospital. My son is gone. You owe me my son.
Michael started crying on the phone. Emily was utterly confused.
What happened? How is this related to Helen?
Stop pretending. Helen had a miscarriage, and it was Linda who caused it. Did you instigate Linda to push Helen?
Emily was shocked, but didn't want to waste time arguing with Michael, so she called John.
Hello?
John, what happened? You sound ill.
John sighed and told Emily the whole story.
Ever since Helen left that day, Linda has been very distracted. I noticed her change but was too busy to address it. Besides my work, I've been dealing with the trouble Linda caused at school. The class monitor's mother reported the incident, demanding serious action against Linda. The school decided to put her on probation. I was worried the punishment would affect her future, so I tried to apologize and negotiate with the school and the class monitor's family.
That sounds intense.
Before I could resolve the school issue, Linda caused another big problem. She said I was too busy and no one was taking care of her, so she called Helen and asked to stay with her for a few days. Helen, worried about being estranged from Linda, agreed. I thought it would be good for Linda to stay with Helen, giving me time to handle my matters, so I agreed. Linda took many things with her, including clothes, shoes, a backpack, snacks, and even a bottle of olive oil.
Olive oil?
Yes, I found it strange but indulged her. Later, Linda took advantage of Michael's absence and smeared olive oil all over the stairs in Helen's house. Then, she distracted Helen with sweet talk. Helen, preoccupied with Linda, didn't notice the oil. When Helen stepped on the stairs, Linda let go and pushed her. Helen fell down the stairs.
Emily knew those stairs well. She had designed and renovated them herself. Linda had spread olive oil on the already slippery stairs and pushed Helen, who was heavily pregnant, making it impossible for her to avoid the fall.
Helen had a miscarriage and severe bleeding. She's still in the hospital, unconscious. The doctors said she needs a hysterectomy and won't be able to have children in the future. Michael has been causing trouble for days, and my anxiety has made me ill.
Where is Linda now?
I had my parents secretly take her to our hometown. Michael is furious and wants to hold Linda accountable. I was worried she would be frightened, so I sent her away to avoid the trouble.
But Linda made a serious mistake. She shouldn't avoid responsibility, especially since Helen is still unconscious. She's Linda's mother.
You're not here to help your ex-husband Michael find out where Linda is, are you?
No, I'm not. Michael accused me of instigating Linda to push Helen, causing her miscarriage. You suspect I'm a spy for Michael. You both overestimate me.
Emily shook her head and told John about Michael's accusations.
I'm sorry, I'm just too nervous. With Helen's life hanging in the balance, if something happens to her, I'm afraid Michael won't let Linda off easily. But Linda is still a child, she didn't mean any harm. She just wanted her mother's love.
John's words left me incredulous. Such meticulous thoughts, such malicious means, this was not something a normal 12-year-old should think of. Yet John downplayed it, saying it was just because she wanted her mother's love.
John, this is too much. We need to talk about this.
It's just because she wants her mother's love, Emily. She doesn't know any better.
I felt there was nothing more to say with John. However, seeing his haggard appearance, it seemed too inhumane to end things with him at this moment. I held back, comforted him a bit, and decided to wait until he had dealt with his current issues before breaking up with him. Michael came to see me again later, shamelessly asking for reconciliation.
I've realized, Emily, that a couple is best when they are the original pair. Helen is now like a hen that can't lay eggs. What do I need her for? The child she and John had is simply too vicious. I reckon, even if Helen did have a son, she would dare to harm him. Actually, I've always loved you, it's just that you didn't want to have children, which put me in a difficult position. You know, I'm the only heir of the Yu family. As long as you're willing to have children, we can remarry immediately.
I sat quietly, watching Michael gesticulate excitedly, without saying a word. Finally, seeing that I remained silent, Michael became embarrassed and shamelessly asked me to give him a straightforward answer.
Well, what do you say, Emily?
Get lost, and don't ever appear in front of me again.
Michael left cursing, saying I didn't know what was good for me. As I got up, I received a call from John, but it was Linda's voice on the other end.
I'm telling you, my dad and my mom are getting back together. You better get lost on your own. You filthy homewrecker, rotten woman, you have no chance of being with my dad. Humph.
Before I could say anything, John grabbed the phone and repeatedly apologized to me, then asked to meet. I agreed. It had only been a few days, but he seemed to have aged several years and looked very despondent.
Emily, I'm sorry, really sorry, it's all my fault.
Explain slowly, John.
It turned out that after Michael heard that Helen could no longer have children, he demanded to send Linda to a juvenile detention center, accusing her of intentional harm. Although Helen was heartbroken over the child she lost, she couldn't bear to send her own daughter away. Helen begged Michael to spare Linda, and Michael finally agreed. But the condition was that Helen had to divorce him, leave with nothing, and pay him $10,000 in emotional damages.
Helen, unwilling to lose both her money and her dignity, came to John. She proposed that if John agreed to remarry her, she would accept Michael's conditions to protect Linda. For Linda's sake, John finally decided to remarry Helen. Today, he came to break up with me and apologize. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief, as I had been troubled about how to break up with John. I immediately nodded repeatedly, expressing my understanding. John painfully grabbed his hair with both hands, tears streaming down, expressing his feelings for me and his own suffering. Feeling a bit awkward, I stood up and hurriedly took my leave.
I don't doubt John's feelings for me. He was indeed an honest and good man, but I never agreed with his way of educating children. He and Helen had taught their child to deceive, distort the truth, use any means necessary, and blur the lines between right and wrong. One indulged the child in not correcting mistakes and avoiding responsibility. Linda becoming what she was today, neither John nor Helen could escape responsibility.
A few years later, I went to the hospital to visit my cousin who had just given birth. As I came out of the parking garage, I saw a somewhat familiar figure in the distance. It vaguely resembled John. But upon closer inspection, although the figure was similar, the person had gray hair and a hunched back, clearly an elderly person. I laughed at myself inwardly, thinking my eyesight was failing at just 40. While waiting for the elevator, someone approached me hesitantly and called my name.
Alice.
I turned around, and it was indeed John. But the sight of him shocked me. Not only was his hair gray, but he also had deep wrinkles at the corners of his eyes and mouth. He looked old and weary, with none of the vigor he once had. At just over 40, he appeared like a man in his 60s. His posture was hunched, and the once spirited John seemed like a completely different person.
Sigh, do I look so old that you can't recognize me?
I quickly averted my gaze and shook my head.
It's okay, I know. Sometimes I scare myself when I look in the mirror.
I remained silent, unsure of how to respond. I was never the outgoing type and had no desire to pry into others' lives. But John clearly had a lot to say.
How have you been these past few years?
I nodded and said I was doing well. John looked dejected and cautiously asked if he could talk to me for a bit.
Emily, I don't mean anything by it. I just want to talk to you. These past few years have been so hard for me. I can't take it anymore. Sometimes I just want to end it all.
I was startled and could only agree to talk with him for a while. We walked up to the second floor and found a quiet corner to stand.
After I remarried Helen, our relationship was terrible, with constant arguments. Linda became increasingly rebellious and was eventually expelled from school for repeatedly fighting with classmates. I begged and pleaded to get Linda into a vocational school, hoping she could at least get through a few years and then find a job. But Linda's behavior worsened at the vocational school. She not only refused to study but also hung out with a bad crowd, picking up all sorts of bad habits. At the vocational school, Linda became a sort of gang leader, often bullying other students. 2 months ago, Linda took a sudden dislike to a quiet girl in her class and slapped and kicked her. Unexpectedly, the quiet girl turned out to be a black belt in Taekwondo. The girl retaliated immediately. Linda, who was used to being dominant, had never suffered such a loss or humiliation. She fought with the girl, initially just exchanging blows without serious injury. But as the fight progressed, Linda was clearly losing and took several punches. Enraged, Linda pulled out a utility knife and aimed it at the girl's face. The girl, shocked, dodged. Linda, thinking the girl was scared, chased her with the knife. The girl, being very fit, ran quickly. Linda, unable to catch her, became desperate and accidentally fell down the stairs, breaking her neck in a bizarre manner. Worse, the utility knife she was holding fell and cut her own artery. By the time she reached the hospital, Linda was in a deep coma. Though she was eventually saved, she was left paralyzed from the neck down. The doctor said Linda's spinal cord was severely damaged from the fall, with multiple fractures and dislocations, resulting in permanent paralysis. In other words, Linda would never live a normal life again.
Narrator, tone, serious. As soon as Emily stepped in, a large dog knocked her down, leaving her speechless from the pain. A soft, weak voice sounded in front of her. It was her future stepdaughter, Linda.
Linda, tone, shy dad, buddy, and I didn't mean to. We just wanted to welcome Aunt Grace.
Narrator, tone, serious. Faced with this rough greeting, Emily straightforwardly told John she wanted to break up and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, John, a 40-year-old man, started crying.
John, tone, pleading Emily, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining the child, but please understand.
Narrator, tone, sad. Hearing John's sobbing, Emily stopped in her tracks. John's ex-wife was Emily's ex-husband's current wife. Friends and family who knew the situation thought Emily must have been emotionally disturbed to be with John. But only Emily knew that she genuinely liked John. Seeing John in tears, she decided to give him another chance.